painful infertility, growing facial hair, suffering with acne, and struggling to lose weight, PCOS is one of the most common, yet one of the most life-altering conditions of our generation. So if you're part of the 1 in 10 with a diagnosis and you're wondering what the hell you should be eating, go get your favorite hormone healthy snack and watch this. Hey everyone, I'm Abbey Sharp. Welcome to Abby's Kitchen. A huge shout out to my colleague Erin Davis for assisting on the research in this video. Erin is a fellow RD and diabetes educator practicing from a weight-inclusive lens. So if you are struggling with your own blood sugars or PCOS diagnosis, definitely reach out. She's amazing. I'm gonna be leaving her contact and links below. Also, check out my full disclaimer in the description. And I also wanna make a quick note that for simplicity in repetition of my own speech, I will be referring to folks with uteruses as women, though I fully acknowledge that folks who identify as men may also have PCOS. And finally, you can also find a link to my new free downloadable HCC ebook and my LTK page if you're wondering what I'm wearing in my videos. Okay, before we get into it, raise your hand if you played Yahtzee as a kid. Like Yahtzee plus pizza in my childhood, prime grade 5 Friday family night. I was so cool, I know. So I was super excited to play Yahtzee with buddies. So this is a reimagined version of the classic Yahtzee game where you get to play in different tournaments and game modes to win different rewards. Because it's all virtual, you can play with other family and friends or players elsewhere in the world. You can also interact through the chat function, so you can like brag or tease them, and then you can win game stickers and prizes. My favorite prize is the scratchers, which are literally like the lottery tickets that my grandma used to buy me, except for every single card is a winner. And you can also customize your dice to whatever color scheme that you like as you get more advanced. It's a really great nostalgic game to unwind with anytime, anywhere, while still keeping my brain challenged and engaged. I also love the family feast because you get to compete with other families, and if you're super competitive like me, it is strangely satisfying. I may or may not be reading winning strategies on Reddit. So if you're looking for a new relaxing end of day ritual, you can download Yahtzee with Buddies using my link in the description. It really helps my channel if you use that specific link, so head to the description box to download it today. Okay, we're gonna make some protein pancakes while we do this. Super quick, PCOS, or polycystic ovarian syndrome, is essentially an imbalance of normal reproductive hormones resulting in irregular menstrual cycles, excess facial hair, acne, weight gain, and infertility. More than half of women with PCOS will also have diabetes or pre-diabetes by the time they're 40, so there is, of course, an interest in managing symptoms early. I get a lot of questions about what to eat and avoid PCOS because we do know that diet can play a role in symptom management. But in my experience, a lot of experts on the internet, they just love to prey on vulnerable folks who are really just quite desperate for symptom relief, especially when perhaps conventional medicine hasn't been so much help. The result is that we see a laundry list of foods that you're allegedly supposed to cut out to heal your hormones.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
So let's talk about what influencers love to tell you is toxic for PCOS and what the research actually says. A very important part of this conversation about PCOS is inflammation. And influencers love to say everything is inflammatory, even though at times it's clear that they don't actually know exactly what that means. But in the context of PCOS, we tend to see higher levels of chronic low-grade inflammation, largely related to what we call advanced glycation end products, aka AGEs. Hold that thought, I gotta blend. So, what was I saying? AGEs. Yes, these are pro-inflammatory molecules that are found in elevated levels in people with diabetes, insulin resistance, PCOS, and other inflammatory diseases like arthritis. And AGEs come directly from our diet. In folks with PCOS specifically, the higher your AGE exposure, the greater your risk of insulin resistance, ovarian dysfunction, and obesity. So now that you have a little bit of background, let's talk about PCOS public enemy number 1, sugar and carbs. So So the sister community loves to hate on carbs, likely because of the not wrong assumption that carbs stimulate insulin and insulin levels tend to be elevated in PCOS. So this has some merit. So a systematic review of the literature found that diets that are low glycemic index, aka they don't raise blood sugars quickly because they're typically lower in carb or rich in higher fiber carbs, tended to improve insulin resistance, fasting insulin, total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, total testosterone, and waist circumference compared to diets that were high GI. Another review suggested that a low fiber, high glycemic index diet was strongly correlated with inflammation, which in turn can also affect fertility. Hold it, let's blend. So we also know that high glycemic index diets do tend to increase the risk of acne, which is already a common concern in a lot of folks with PCOS. So yes, a diet that is lower on the glycemic index obviously is beneficial for this particular population. But, this is a big but.
I like big butts and I cannot lie.
Low GI doesn't have to mean you can't have carbs, you have to go keto, as so many influencers out there insist. So this study, for example, compared a high fiber, low GI diet to a generally healthy diet with the exact same amounts of carbs, protein, fat, and fiber. So both diets contained 50% of carbs. That's like 250 grams of carbs. So it's definitely not keto. But the low GI group carbs were like less refined, higher fiber options that help to balance those blood sugars. And despite having all those carbs, the low GI group still saw improvements in insulin control. And as I discussed in my video on sugar, sugar alone is not the cause of insulin resistance, or in this case, PCOS. It often comes down to what are we eating with our sugar, aka are we dressing up those naked carbs with hunger-crushing compounds to reduce the insulin response? And it also comes down to how those carbs are affecting our energy balance and our body weight. So yes, you can have carbs. You just want to choose higher fiber, complex carbs, or make them into hunger-crushing combos more often to improve satiety, which reduces the risk of weight gain and also helps to stabilize our insulin. Nice. Number 2, let's talk about another commonly shunned food group in this community, dairy. So if sugar is like king of bad PR, dairy is the spare to the heir and is often called out for being pro-inflammatory in the PCOS community. But interestingly, the research does not support all this shade. Not towards all dairy at least. So one of the main concerns is that dairy will exacerbate hormonal acne. And yes, we do see an association between dairy and acne. You know, dairy is thought to increase the hormone insulin growth factor 1, which can cause a bump in insulin levels, and androgen hormones, which can then cause acne. But this association was largely seen with fat-free or low-fat milk, not full-fat milk or fermented dairy like cheese. And I don't know about you guys, but I will trade like cheese for skim milk any day of the week. We also tend to see the same pattern with fertility outcomes and different types of dairy. So research has linked the consumption of low-fat and non-fat dairy to increased risk of anovulatory infertility, whereas consuming full-fat dairy actually reduced the risk. And if we look at the official fertility diet developed from the Nurses' Health Study data, we see that their ideal diet includes higher fat dairy products like yogurt and cheese. So no, you don't have to cut out dairy if it brings you joy, but choose things like full-fat yogurt and higher moisture, high protein cheeses like mozzarella or cottage cheese like I'm doing right here, which contain lower levels of HE compared to aged cheeses like Parm. I gotta wash my hands. That's a lot. Next, let's talk about gluten, and thankfully this one is gonna be quick. So again, this one comes down to the assumption that wheat or gluten is inflammatory, which may be true for folks with celiac or gluten intolerance, but if we do see this association, it's likely more to do with the choice in wheat products being more refined or higher glycemic index than the gluten protein itself. There is zero evidence that gluten contributes to PCOS, yet there is research that a gluten-free diet tends to have lower nutritional value compared to traditional diets. So typically, gluten-free alternatives are lower in fiber and higher on the glycemic index, which may actually actually result in higher insulin levels and inflammation, which can then exacerbate PCOS symptoms. So this is obviously quite individualized, but if you are not celiac or gluten intolerant, I suggest choosing higher fiber grains, whatever you like, with or without gluten, and then just like move on. Ignore the gluten haters. It's gonna be all right. As for foods that may be worth limiting with PCOS, one would be highly processed fried foods, which contain some of the highest levels of AGEs and are linked to ovulation dysfunction. Red meat is another one, which again has some of the highest levels of AGEs, especially when cooked on super high heats like on a barbecue or on a grill. And then finally, alcohol, which can potentially dysregulate estrogen and progesterone levels, can also cause blood sugar fluctuations, and potentially can reduce fertility. Even 5 drinks a week has been associated with a reduced chance of getting pregnant. So now we've debunked the don'ts and we've discussed what ideally we might want to consider limiting. But let's talk about what actually matters in nutrition, to me at least, and that is what we want to add. So as you guys know, I have an additive approach to nutrition because I just think that focusing all the time on what we need to take away shifts us into scarcity mentality, which puts us at an even greater risk of overeating, which in the case of PCOS would typically exacerbate a lot of negative symptoms. So here are some key things that I want you guys to focus on. Number 1, focus on plant-based foods. So you don't have to look up the glycemic index of everything you eat, nor do you have to Google its AGE content. If we focus on getting in a variety of colorful plant-based foods like fruits and vegetables, we will end up with more fiber and more antioxidants that together can fight inflammation and also reduce the insulin response. Fiber, as I always talk about, also increases satiety, which will then help with weight management. Number 2, lean protein. So I talk about it all the time for good reason. Protein is king in the satiety hierarchy. It's also associated with weight control, and when paired with carbohydrates, it can help to flatten that blood sugar response. And this is why it is a key feature of my Hunger Crushing combo for everyone, but it's particularly important for folks with insulin resistance. So think things like legumes, poultry, fish, tofu, cottage cheese, Greek yogurt, etc. Number 3, healthy fats. You guys know I was gonna say it, but we know omega-3s are anti-inflammatory and have also been shown to help improve insulin resistance in folks with PCOS. So I really do encourage people to incorporate more fatty fish, flax, hemp, walnuts, etc. to get in that daily dose. So as you guys can see, we're talking about my Hunger Crushing combo, right? Fiber, protein, healthy fats. It does not need to be more complicated than that. Now, when it comes to supplements for PCOS, I'm a big supporter of supplements for really anyone, especially for those who have a particular health condition, because I think in a lot of cases it can help you reach better food freedom by removing the burden of having to make your diet perfectly every day. So some supplements that we have some evidence to support for PCOS include inositol, curcumin, vitamin D, CoQ10, probiotics, berberine, and as we mentioned, omega-3s. Finally, getting in adequate sleep and daily exercise are also key evidence-based PCOS management tips. So I hope that helped clear the air on what might be worth you focusing on if you're struggling with PCOS. And a reminder that PCOS is highly individualized. So what works well for one person won't work for another person, and vice versa. A lot will just depend on your symptoms, your hormone levels, your sensitivity, etc. So always speak to a healthcare provider like my colleague Erin, who again, I'm gonna be leaving the information for below. But on that note, that's all that I have for you guys today. If you like this video, please be sure to give it the thumbs up, bananas up, knives up, whatever. Leave me a comment below on any questions that you have or any other nutrition questions or concerns that you'd like me to do a video on. Don't forget to check out my new free Hunger Crushing combo ebook below, and I'll see you next time on Abby's Kitchen. Bye.